So I am so excited to be back, and I have a second visitor that I'm so excited for this conversation. So today we've got Tertia, who I personally am working with, coaching in a beautiful Vivid course. And I also know her through doTERRA essential oils. But she, somebody just, the way they described Tertia me once was, I don't know, one human who seems to do so much and yet be like gliding through it. That's Tertia. Things just seem to happen around her. So she's got a little bit of, I don't know, magic of some kind. And I'll just give you a little bite size of, because her CV is beautiful. And she also actually runs, is it PureRepubliq? Is that the official name?
Yes, the PureRepubliq Network.
Yeah, which is like a community. I belong to a few of hers. That's just a beautiful place to learn. So she is a digital identity and trauma-informed integrated health and nutrition coach with certifications from IIN, Food Matters, and Columbia University in New York. For those of you who understand all that, I understand the university part and that food matters. But the big thing that I think is particularly relevant for us today is she specializes in gut, hormone, and metabolic health. So welcome, Tertia. I'm just turning off my printer.
Thanks for having me. We might end up being here for hours because there's always so much fun chatting.
I know. So we're going to try and be succinct and have one. I said to her, we'll have you back because I'm sure there's lots to go. But we had Colleen on this Exploring with Candice, and right now we're exploring peri-menopause and menopause. But now we get down to the nitty-gritty of somebody who knows the science and what's going on or what the big picture is in detail. Is that a fair comment? I don't know. Anyway.
Well, we hope so, right? And we'll chat about how little we actually know, but we know what we know. And so we'll work with what we know.
Oh, that's a good point. I actually, yesterday I saw a graph like what you don't know, you don't know. What you do know, you don't know. And the one sliver of what we actually know. And I thought it's such a good thing to keep in front of us because I always think I know stuff, but you don't know anything.
And actually, Candice, it's such a good point. It's something that I wanted to really land today. And that is that it is how much do we really know about our bodies? How much does the medical system really know? And here's the sad thing. Most of the research done on health, fasting, all kinds of things was done with men, right? Because we women are complicated. And so it's really expensive to do clinical research on women because you have to get them to all align up on the cycle, understand what's happening in every part of the cycle. We are really complicated. And so a lot of the information, the health information that is out there in general, doesn't necessarily apply to women or not in the same way. We need to adapt it. Fasting, intermittent fasting is a great example of that, right? Where if you fast 16/8 every day of your life, like a man does, you're going to have some hormone issues, right? But it doesn't take away that it's got benefits. We just need to adapt it. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is every day there's new data coming out. And fortunately, a lot of more research now on women's health, but also not as much in the clinical space. But what we are seeing, thanks to technology, all these like devices like Whoop, the Aura rings, etc., is that through big data, through capturing all this information about women, we are finally starting to get to understand more real information. What is the real stuff that women are experiencing? What are the real impacts? So it's a very exciting time, but it is absolutely important to know that we can't go out in the world and just take any information from any health influencer on Instagram and think that one, it actually applies to us, but even two, that it really is applicable to women in general. So it is a good place to start, is to almost connect back with, yes, there's knowledge,
Yes.
but it only is validated when we're connected to ourselves.
And sorry, but what did you call it? Whoop and lunar ring.
Yeah, Whoop and Aura ring. So Aura ring is a ring that you wear and it gathers all kinds of information, your sleep data, heart rate, all those types of things. And Whoop is a device. And so there's more, very similar to a smartwatch, but they're getting more and more sophisticated, you know. Same with when we're doing metabolic health, we look at the blood glucose monitor, right? Now finally they're taking all of that data and they're looking at women and what's specific to women, and we're learning so much.
whole new world opening up. I love the fact you keep saying we're complicated. I'm like, that's my experience. I'm like, it's so, I said to someone, men are so uncomplicated. It's like they see the world in black and white. And for so many of us, we see it in all the hues and shades and differences. And my husband so often like, what are you on about? While you're talking about this shade of turquoise that's a light blue that just doesn't feature in his world.
Exactly. So I always think about it this way. If we had to put our relationship with ourselves as a Facebook status, it will always be complicated. Men are like the sun. They reset every 24 hours. We are like the moon. We reset every 28 days for some. Some are 26, some are 32. So we are very unique. And when we reset aligned with the moon is also different. The men are really much simpler. Yeah.
Yeah, real. So on that note, Tertia, for us, what is going on when we like go into perimenopause, menopause? Why does this happen? I'm like, the other day I was like, why, what is the reason that we believe this is happening to our bodies?
So this is such an important question because I think there's so much emotion and energy attached to perimenopause, menopause, besides the fact that often we feel absolutely crappy when we go through it. So understanding what it is and reframing it is really important. If you look at it at the most simplest level, perimenopause is a transitional phase that bridges our reproductive years, so when we're having babies, to our unreproductive years, right? Menopause. And so what happens in that perimenopause phase is that our hormones start fluctuating and we have all these symptoms, irregular periods, hot flashes, mood changes, sleep disturbances, brain fog, right? And so typically what menopause is defined as, menopause is actually one single day in your life. It is the day that you have not had a period for 12 months. It's your 12 months no period birthday. The day after you reach menopause, you're now postmenopause. And that is so it's the birthday or the birthday of the end of your reproductive years, or like I say, your years of choosing yourself. That's what menopause is. And so there's actually a lot of similarities. So people who are going through perimenopause and going, what the hell's going on, or what can I expect? It's a very close mirror actually to puberty. Both are times of major hormonal shift. Your body is recalibrating, right? In puberty, your hormones are ramping up to establish fertility. When perimenopause, you're winding down out of the reproductive phase. So similarities could be mood swings. Is anybody got a teenage daughter? Regular periods, sleep disturbances. Your brain is physically undergoing changes. And we know now that not only is menopause and perimenopause a hormonal, endocrine change, the research of our brains is now showing it's a metabolic change in the brain. How the body conserves and uses energy and how the brain uses energy is actually changing. So skin, metabolism, digestion, all those same things are very similar to puberty and perimenopause. So it's a bit of a throwback to when we were teenagers, right? Differences are that in puberty, hormones are increasing and stabilizing, while in perimenopause, they're fluctuating and declining. Those are the opposites, but the effect is kind of the same. And in puberty, estrogen is rising and it can spike. And then in puberty, prepares the body, while in perimenopause, that transition is away, right? But I think it's important to understand, and this is the fear, menopause and perimenopause is not a disease. In the same way that pregnancy is not a disease. It's just a transition into a very powerful phase of your life, right? It's a biological recalibration rather than a decline.
Do you know what, as I hear you, I totally like, I partly it sounds so exciting, actually. The reality of, I've heard a little bit that actually our brains are able to be more selfish in a way that while we in our fertility years, like self-sacrifice is like the leading cause of life. But I'm laughing because I'm 47. I can't tell you actually if I'm clearly in perimenopause or not. I'm sure I am. But the reality is I had a son very late at 40. And so I'm 47 and he's 6. And I'm like, oh, am I going to be a terrible mother as a result of being menopausal while he is 10?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? Is our fertility years have extended due to the way that we live, right? And so my eldest, who's 27, I had when I was 23, and my youngest is 10, right? And so, and we're gonna circle back to this. Let's not forget about this, because yes, you can have those fears. I'm choosing myself. Am I neglecting my child? But I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about how we navigate this, because that's a very powerful motivator. Your child at that age is a very powerful motivator and inspiration, in fact, for you to make the changes you need to make to navigate perimenopause and menopause better. And we're going to get into that a little bit. But I want to give you a different analogy to think about perimenopause, menopause. Think about the butterfly and the caterpillar, right? When the caterpillar, that's our reproductive years. This is our fertile phase. We are constantly consuming, building, growing. We're outwardly focused, whether it's our careers, raising our children, or just societal roles, right? We're on constant motion and productivity and taking in as much as we can. Perimenopause is like the chrysalis, right? This is where things start to change. Inside that cocoon, that caterpillar doesn't grow wings. It really dissolves into complete mush, right? It breaks down. It has to let go. It's not negotiating, right? You have no choice. It has to let go of everything it once was before it can rebuild itself into something new. And this is perimenopause. Our hormones fluctuate. We feel like we're falling apart. And everything we once knew starts to shift. It can feel chaotic, uncomfortable, even terrifying. But this is the phase that's actually essential for that transformation. And then post-menopause, that birthday, this beautiful butterfly comes out. So after the messy in-between, the butterfly emerges strong, light, and with a new perspective. And so the same happens for women post-menopause. We step into a wisdom and a power and an authenticity. We are no longer driven by the cycles of fertility, hormonal highs and lows that call to be constantly nurturing other people at the expense of ourselves. Nurturing is not an issue. That I think we will always do that. But we have to stop doing it at the expense of ourselves. So we gain a kind of a new energy, not for others, but for ourselves that we never had, right? But we fear menopause. And I can also correlate that to the butterfly, right? A butterfly can't see its own wings. So it doesn't realize how beautiful it has become. And so many people enter perimenopause believing they're losing something. But what if you could see that you're actually gaining something far greater, right? And the reason this happens is society has conditioned us to value youth over wisdom. We fear about losing our identities. I mean, that's some of the work that we do in Vivid, because so much of our sense of self has been tied to those reproductive years. We associate menopause with aging, irrelevance, instead of power and rebirth, right? So yeah, and there's some beautiful examples of this in nature if you want to hear more of the nature story, because we're not the only species that goes through menopause. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I had no idea. Somebody I know photographed a set of just agapanthus actually, and they had all the different stages of it. And so there's like the little it's in like a bud, and then you see it opening, and they're all the buds. And then slowly, and then you see it like in a dying phase, and then you see the seeded phase. And it was such a turning point for me in recognizing, hold on, in society, we literally worship the blossom or the bud. And everything else is almost ignored, the seeding, etc. So it's so beautiful, your example you share. I'd love to hear one or two more nature examples.
Yes. So really interesting. In mammals, there are only 3 species that experience menopause: humans, orcas, killer whales, and elephants. And there's something fascinating, right? Female humans, orcas, and elephants all outlive their male counterparts by 10 to 30 years. It's not a coincidence. Nature clearly favors our wisdom and wants us around for a long time more than the man's wisdom. So when your husband gives you a little bit of nonsense, you just remind him of this fact, right? If menopause was a design flaw, nature would have fixed it by now, right? Instead of giving us the extra time You know, while the men were, let's just say, they weren't programmed for longevity the way we were, right? Because our wisdom is needed in this world. And it comes with a lot of that nurturing. So, it ties into this, are we giving up that nurturing? So, yeah, menopause doesn't mean we're losing value. It's literally a new role. And if you look at elephants and the roles of the matriarch, right? And how in that society, that community, they raise each other's babies. They even suckle each other's babies, right? And then orcas are very similar. So, what I want to challenge people around this fear around menopause and perimenopause, instead of going at it from a what am I losing, what you should be asking is what am I gaining, right? And there's three things that I would love to inspire everybody to really feel in the body. Menopause, perimenopause is getting you ready for the freedom to focus on yourself. And you've got the wisdom, right? So trust yourself. You're not going to neglect everybody else, but there is freedom to focus on yourself. Then there's the wisdom to lead others, your little ones, your nieces, your women in your community. And then, of course, the third one is the power to live unapologetically. There's so much we apologize for women of not being enough, not cooking enough, not cooking early enough, not feeding our children, not picking them up from school on time. This is the time that starts to change, right? And that's what I would really love for people to understand about this amazing phase. In fact, our grandmothers used to call it the change of life, right? We've gotten that term. And I think that's exactly, what it is. Yeah.
Yes. And also, I certainly, I mentioned it previously, I think that idea that we can really inspire aging to be something inspiring, to be something of value. You see the blue zones where people live longer as they value the aged. And so to be part of that kind of change, I mean, it's beautiful watching these conversations happen more easily, and maybe it's our age, but definitely with the research, with social media, you're seeing what previously, like, as you say, stopped being spoken about. My mother, certainly, I had very little access to information. So Tertia, what actually happens in the body in this change of life? And here we are in the messy mush of being in our cocoon and dissolving. What is actually happening in the body?
There's a lot that's happening. So I'm going to try and really go through it very high level. But basically, to understand what's happening in the body, we need to understand hormones. And hormones are the chemical messengers. They travel through our bloodstream. They tell different parts of the body what to do. They interact with our neurotransmitters, right? And they regulate everything from metabolism, mood, sleep, energy levels, fertility. And that is why when I was studying, I can't just go and do just hormones or just gut. They are so interconnected. So, I always say health is whole person. Your systems don't work in isolation. They're not these factories that are not connected. So that's why we have to understand that our chemical messengers, our hormones, are essential, right? The other thing, we spoke a little bit about how little we know. There are over 50 known hormones in the body, and many of those we don't even fully understood, especially in the female body, right? So, for example, there are hormones like kisspeptin. Have you ever heard of it? No?
No.
Kisspeptin regulates puberty and reproduction. And then we've got another one called erosin. It's linked to metabolism and exercise, right? And we're only starting to understand some of these, right? Only starting. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we know things, but we don't know the whole story, right?
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge that we don't know the whole story, and we have to be okay with that and trust our bodies, right?
Yes. That's a big one for me, because often, even like I teach emotional intelligence, and there's a magnificent book written in the 80s before the term had even been coined. And it's clear she was teaching EQ, but it was intuitive. And I always think we forget whatever the science is, whatever's out there inside of us, like that. My one friend who talks about butterflies talks about the organizing signal. Like you said, you can't resist it. The organizing signal's working. But if you tune into it, you can be guided to your version of what is needed.
Absolutely. And this is where we're a little bit cursed with all this information, which our grandmothers and aunts and mothers didn't have, right? So it becomes harder to listen to yourself, because without you knowing, whatever you saw on Instagram, whatever influencer is trying to sell whatever program, right? They've put some stuff in your brain. So you start feeling through that lens, right? So when you listen, I really want to urge people, I don't have a problem. I come from the digital world. I have no problem with social media, screen time, etc. I love it. It's great. What is important is that you own it and it does not own you. So you understand how the algorithm is going to feed you what you're looking at. But more importantly, when you're looking at social media for information, be conscious of it is just information. It is not necessarily true or applicable to you. That's important because otherwise you get lost in it. So yeah, it's very important. But let's go through a couple of the things that you'll probably hear out there. The first one is hormones, right? Estrogen. Estrogen is the queen bee of the female hormones, right? She is the thing, right? She is it. She regulates the menstrual cycle, supports brain function, skin elasticity, heart health, bone strength, mood, stability, and interacts with serotonin, our feel-good neurotransmitter. And this is why when estrogen starts doing things, our mood swings, anxiety, etc. That's progesterone. Then we've got progesterone. It's often called the calming hormone. It plays a very crucial role in balancing estrogen. So when estrogen levels rise too high without enough progesterone, that leads to what we call estrogen dominance. And that's PMS, weight gain, fibroids, heavy periods, that's all related to that. But also, progesterone counteracts estrogen by regulating cell growth, so prevents estrogen from overstimulating tissues in the uterus and the breast. And it also supports GABA production, right? GABA production is GABA is a neurotransmitter that down-regulates stress. So serotonin helps us feel happy. Dopamine, similar. GABA suppresses stress, which allows us to sleep, which allows us to feel less anxious. So that's a relationship between progesterone and GABA. Also, progesterone is a natural diuretic. It helps us reduce bloating, get rid of extra fluid, and it helps to balance blood sugar and reduce inflammation. So you can understand how when these things start fluctuating and changing, that's a problem. Testosterone is the other hormone, the male hormone. We do use that. It energizes us. Testosterone gives you confidence, right? That's why men are so confident in life. I don't know if you know this stat, but a man on average only needs to have about 5 to 6% of the knowledge that he sees required in a job application. He will apply. Women will only apply when they have 80 to 90% of the knowledge. And I've testosterone for that, right? That's confidence, right? They've got confidence.
You make me want to drink testosterone.
Exactly, yeah. Then, of course, you've got cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and that's our secondary master hormones. Our hormones do have a hierarchy, right? And then we've got, obviously, oxytocin. A lot of people call it the love hormone. I love to call it the connection hormone, right? It releases when we have orgasms. It releases when we give birth, right? Connection, social bonding, right? Even if you're looking at pictures of your family, right? So it's all connection. And why I don't call it the love hormone, right, is because oxytocin can be vicious, right? So if you are in a connection with your community, your family, etc., and somebody comes and threatens that, that's not testosterone or cortisol that gets you going. It's actually oxytocin, because something is threatening your connection, right? So it's a connection hormone. And then, of course, we've got thyroid hormones. Thyroid controls more our metabolism, our energy levels, and your thyroid hormones need to be balanced for you to lose weight, right? You cannot burn fat if your thyroid hormones are not working properly. And then the last one that we've got is prolactin. We all associate prolactin with breastfeeding, right? When your prolactin releases, you make milk. So we call it the mothering hormone. But what few people know is prolactin also impacts our metabolism and our immune function, right? So there's no... These hormones, all of them, even testosterone, are women, right? Because they multifunction. They do many things. They're not focused on a single thing. So that's, those are the hormones. So these start changing, right? And so the biggest change between perimenopause, and menopause is that our estrogen starts fluctuating during perimenopause, and then it will decline slightly. Progesterone declines first, usually, because we don't have to ovulate. We don't have to create babies anymore. That's really what progesterone supports, right? It's also what calms you down so that you are a better mother, right? So our biggest challenge is that our estrogen starts decreasing, and then often with our lifestyle, we have this too much estrogen that then causes all kinds of issues. That's the biggest thing. But even testosterone has an impact, right? So especially if you are losing muscles, so that's part of the things that we need to do. And so that's really what's happening, is these hormones are going all over the place during perimenopause. When we hit menopause, they start stabilizing, and we have a lot less of them. So you may have things, for example, drier skin, etc. Because what the biggest change physically is that before menopause or before perimenopause, almost half of those hormones, progesterone, estrogen, etc., are made in the ovaries. As our ovaries make less and less of that because we're going through this change, we now become dependent on our adrenals to make those hormones. But our adrenals' first job is to make cortisol. So if you're highly stressed, right, it's going to steal from your progesterone production. So what you have to see is it's almost like a printer. Your ink levels are coming down. That's okay if they come down at the same time. If you have a lot more yellow left than blue, now you could have a problem, right? And so what we want to make sure is that we are feeding ourselves, using that raw material that we've got that makes all those hormones in the best possible way. And so this is why.
You'll carry on? No, carry on.
So the number one thing for you when you go through this stage is to not stress. The number one place for you to start not stressing is to not think and feel fearful about this change. I know it's hard to say, but that is the work here. Because if you can stop worrying about this so much and start trusting yourself, already you have got 20, 30% of your report cards checked. Yeah, there we go.
So, Tertia, I'm listening to you, and literally the panic is rising in my body. I'm like, oh, I like the reframe and butterflies, but for someone like me, we've now known for whatever 3 or 4 years, my estrogen levels are through the roof. I remember the doctor saying to me, "You basically have PMS all month," and I was like, "Oh, my husband will vouch for that." and then you say, "Don't stress," and I'm like, who? Like, I'm trying to learn to stress better. But
yes,
when you put in that order, like basically not quite calm down, but like you want to navigate your stress well, I'm like, how? And I know that's a whole separate conversation.
It is a whole separate conversation, but there's a couple of I always say awareness is the most important thing. When you become aware that you need to do this, you will already start changing, right? And you will know when you're not changing fast enough if you give yourself just one quiet moment in a day, right? That will happen. So there are a couple of things we can just quickly touch on, right? You have to eat to support your hormones. And I want to be very clear here. And this is what happens. Women start gaining weight, and now they want to eat for weight loss. Eating healthy and eating for fat loss and eating for weight loss are three fundamentally different things, right? Eating healthy does not mean you're going to lose weight. Eating for weight loss does not mean you're going to lose fat. And so there's some fine tuning. But I also don't believe in deprivation, and I don't believe in fear, because the minute you fear, stress goes up. The minute any change that you're making, positive or negative, causes stress, if it's a positive change, you might as well stop, because it just negates the positivity. Because stress, it will go to cortisol, there your progesterone goes, there your estrogen goes, craziness, right? So you have to just be aware. And like you say, we can't escape stress, but can we have a different response to it? And what are the tool sets we can learn for that? But there's also some basic things, right? So I always start with nutrition. It is if anything in this world should have been called medicine, and it's food. It's food, it's medicine, it's so much more to that. So there are some basic things that we probably won't discuss too much the why today, but I want to just kind of give people some ideas. So to eat well, use a guide. You need 100 grams of protein daily, right? So give me an idea. 100 grams of ostrich or 100 grams of chicken breast will give you about 30 grams of protein. So you need to have 3 of those a day, minimum, to support your muscle mass, your metabolism, your neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, etc., right? Which affect mood and energy. So do that. Start there. It's hard to ramp up protein. The majority of women that I see eat way too little protein. So you have to have 3 meals, or 3 meals of 30 grams, or 2 meals of 50 grams, right? Depending on whether you're fasting and things like that. The raw material for your hormones are also your healthy fats. So these, you also use them for hormone production, brain function, and cellular health, right? The cholesterol does two things in your body. It is the raw material for your hormones, and it is the lining of your cells. So if they're too thin or too thick, it's a problem. So a lot of cholesterol theory out there today is fundamentally flawed. It's totally coming at it from a cardiovascular view, and it's flawed. Now, I've spoken to some of the privilege of working with some of the most amazing cholesterol researchers and specialists in the world. And more and more we see now, cardiovascular surgeons and doctors are saying, what we told you was wrong. It's coming out. So 100 grams of protein, 50 grams of fat. So what I say, what's a healthy fat? Olive oil, avocado oil, olives, nuts, avocado, etc. Right? All very good. All very good. Then the one thing that I don't think there's a country in the world that provides a fiber recommendation, but we know that we have to have, a woman especially has to have at least 30 grams of fiber. Fiber does all kinds of things. It's essential for gut health. It helps estrogen detoxification, right? So when your estrogen is a bit high and your body's not metabolizing it properly, it helps with that. And it also stabilizes blood sugar. And certain fibers also prevent cholesterol uptake into the bloodstream. So if you are worried about cholesterol, then fiber will help you with that as well. So those are kind of what we call your macros, right?
Okay, I'm going to be really dumb here for a moment, because what exactly do you mean when you say fiber? Because
fiber would be green leafy vegetables.
Okay.
Fruits like apples, pears, strawberries, berries, they're all high in fiber and antioxidants, right? And then there are some fiber, psyllium husk is a fiber. Certain inulin is a fiber. So there's all kinds of soluble fibers. But for what I would say for one, so what does that look like on a plate, right? Half your plate. So if you have a plate like this, half your plate should be piled with mostly green veg. It could be leaves, it could be beans, it could be etc. I do not believe in cutting out food groups. So I would say you should have also some butternut or some sweet potato or some carrots or beetroots, about the equivalent of maybe 3 tablespoons. You could also do like a rice, a brown rice, a black rice, even a white rice. If you want to do stir fry, but maximum 3 tablespoons, but do have some. And then about an equivalent of a thumb full of fat. So it could be like a quarter avo, a little bit of olive oil, etc. Some nuts sprinkled over, seeds even. Those are all good. And that's what you need. And I would say to this, you need to start with this. If you're not already doing it, whether you're 23 or 33 or 43 or 53 or 63, you should start doing this. You can even go higher on some of the protein, but that's where we should be starting. Then so that's how much of these specific things we need to eat. So I also tell, because stress is the most important thing, when a woman eats certain foods, her body goes, oh, the world is good, right? And those things are, and I'm sorry for vegan and vegetarian people, but when a woman eats animal meat, chicken, fish, whatever, which one, it tells our body that we have enough, and it calms down stress, right? So if you are vegan or vegetarian, you have to work a little bit harder at creating comfort in the body, right? The second thing is fruits. Fruits, right? So 2 to 3 fruits a day, ideally things like berries, citruses, apples, pears, all have all the nutrients we need. So eat 2 to 3 of those like a day. And that actually helps calm down the body. It manages oxidative stress. It helps imbalances like cortisol, serotonin, etc. And the fiber also helps regulate blood sugar. So that's the second one. And then the third one is roots, right? Sweet potato, yams, root vegetables. But if you are struggling a little bit of weight gain, I would stay away from the white root vegetables. I would stick to the colored ones. So sweet potatoes, carrots, beetroot, and
Onions. No, the onions white.
the sweet potato, butternut, right?
Okay.
But what I would like you to do with those to counter that sugar thing, right, is you never, a root vegetable is not something you ever steam. You always bake it, let it cool down, and then you can warm it up again. And what happens is those sugary fibers that we've got in those foods, when you cool them down and heat them up again, it changes to what calls insoluble, a soluble fiber, a resistant starch, sorry, a resistant starch. And resistant starches release less sugar into your system, which is one of the things we need to manage, but it also is very healing to the gut, right? So if you do the 100 grams of protein, 50 grams of fat, 30 grams of fiber, those types of foods on your plate. And by the way, you can have steak and veggies for breakfast, much better than muesli and yogurt and stuff.
Can I interject there? Tertia, I mean, that's something you brought into my life. Like, will you please eat your dinner for breakfast? First of all, as we spoke about, it's radically changed how I prep breakfast, because I do just box up some of dinner. It's put in a container, it's sorted.
Oh, that, by the way, that we call cook once, eat twice, right? Because remember, you have to choose yourself and have more time for yourself. So that's a great way to make time for yourself, right? Cook once, eat twice.
And it's been a really fantastic thing. I love it, because normally, even today, I haven't had leftover dinner. There was a mix up in our house last night, and I went to the fridge. I'm like, oh, like what do I do? Whereas by having it cook once, eat twice, it's so simple for me, where I'm like, oh, fantastic, there's breakfast. And knowing that, and it definitely I've noticed affects my cravings in the day. When I eat that, I have it less. And so
that's your protein. That's the power
example
of protein, by the way. Power of protein, and then not having sugary stuff, because once your blood sugar starts spiking, you're in this roller coaster and you can't get off, right? That's exactly what you're preventing. So yes. Okay. But I think your point is also valid, because a big part, most of the coaching that I do is actually not about the nutrition stuff. Surprisingly, most people have a really good idea about what's healthy, what's not healthy. We just fine tune that and tweak that for their body, because everybody's body is different. And even if you're 4 women with the exact same body, if in 4 different weeks, they're like quadruplets, they're not the same, right? So you have to adjust for that. But a big part of this change of choosing yourself is the practicalities of what are the hacks, right? For making sure I always have a breakfast. So yes, cook once, eat twice is one. The other one is also, there are some foods that you can make a kilogram of bolognese and you can freeze it, right? Things like that. There are these hacks, and that's where a lot of the tricks come in. That's what makes it easier, is we put so much pressure on ourselves that I must go and I must cook fresh food and I must do this and I must do that. There are these hacks that actually make it easier for you. And in fact, through menopause, you need to become a master at those, because that's how you get to make more time for yourself without neglecting anybody else, right?
Amazing. Tertia, what are the symptoms? Like, I say, I don't even know if I'm in perimenopause. Currently I have a fairly regular inconsistent, well, it's not inconsistent, but the length of my cycles varies by a few days. But I have a very consistent cycle. I don't get hot flashes, because everyone's speaks about hot flashes. What can we expect are some of these like symptoms?
So the start is always, and there's almost any hormonal issue could result in irregular periods, right? The irregular periods. So I would say, look at you need 5 or 6 of these, then you know you're there for sure, right? Irregular periods. Because the hormones are fluctuating, very similar to when you in puberty, right? You don't have, when you start out, you don't have a regular period every day. That only kind of happens, I think, in our 20s. And for me, my period only stabilized after I had my first child, right? Although young, right? So irregular periods, hot flashes and night sweats. Typically, that is an indication that your estrogen is going up, right? Your progesterone estrogen is out of whack. And again, you could have that at any time, but it really becomes obvious when we get to this age. sleep disturbances, right? So because of your progesterone, you may not fall asleep easily, you may not stay asleep, etc. And the one thing I do want to say about sleep, your aim should be, one of the ways you're going to choose yourself after this call is you're going to start making sure that you are working up to 8 to 9 hours of sleep, not 7 to 8, not 6, 8 to 9. Right? So that's a goal. The research shows that we're going through teenage again, right? Teenagers should be sleeping 12 hours a day, right? So we get to sleep at least 9. So that's the first thing. But it is hard because what often happens is you're tired, but you wake up often. That's hormonal. What I want to say to women is it will stabilize, but also don't. We have this idea. It's ideal. There's nothing better than getting to the bed at 9 o'clock at night, waking up at 6 o'clock, and you go, oh my gosh, what happened, right? But we kind of forget how that feels like because we've got children. But that is the ideal. But if you are going through this and you are waking up every 2, 3 hours or 3 times a night, don't get stressed about it. Don't get worried about it, right? The more you stress about it, the harder it is to fall back to sleep. If you are waking up, and you go to the toilet, you get a glass of water, and you fall back asleep within a minute or two, it's absolutely fine. Our sleep cycles work like that. But if you wake up and now you're stressed about it, or you wake up in the morning, I woke up 7 times, you're actually creating a problem where there isn't. Because we say 8 to 9 hours, but the real measurement of sleep is, are you waking up feeling rested? That's the real measurement, right?
Yeah, no, that's a nice recognition.
Mood swings, our husbands know all about that. I think
that doesn't feel like it's starting in menopause for some of us.
So I'll say something to you, right? So I did the blood testing, and I mean, like I said, the 12 months after your last period is what we claim as this is menopause. But there are some blood tests that's going to indicate. We specifically look at our FSH hormone, a follicle stimulating hormone. Imagine what that does. It stimulates the follicle to be released from the ovary. That's a really clear indicator of menopause. So when that's really low, you know you're menopause. So for example, last year March, because I turned 50 in September, before that, I went in and I wanted a bone density. Very important to do because we do lose bone density. And I wanted to do a breast sonar, not a mammogram, so that I had a benchmark for where am I at this. Now that I've finished the first half of my life, because I'm planning to live to at least 100, right? So I got that benchmark, and at that stage we also did some blood tests, and I wasn't menopausal. And in fact, this woman doing my sonar, doing my bone density, came to check my age 3 times. They were like, "It looks so good. We can't believe this is your age." And in fact, there was also, by the way, a bit of personal information. When I was going, I'm definitely not menopausal yet. I have my period right now, right? It's also the last period I had. So I don't, strictly speaking, have a year. But when I did my blood test again in September, my FSH was very low. And so I know I'm pretty much in menopause. I'm not expecting another period in my life, right? So those mood swings, it happens, but I think mood swings is an understatement. For me, what I noticed, and I was for almost 2 years, is I wasn't angry, I wasn't upset, but I had this quiet rage, like a rage building in me, but almost like one that I could watch myself, right? It didn't even go. So that for me started actually this feeling that, hang on, something is changing. I'm really angry about something, which is actually just, it's your neurotransmitters and your hormones changing, right? So that's a big one. Then brain fog. And this is, for me personally, where I think I had to work through a lot of anxiety. And I found some amazing research this week that has just let me go of not any last, but some of my big concerns around menopause. Is we talk about the brain fog that happens, but we also now know that metabolically our brain is changing. But the research that's just come out shows, it's the first kind of long-term research study on menopausal women and brain fog, shows that most women go through a year, 2 years to 6 years maximum, more or less, of brain fog. And then their mental capacity comes back. But guess what? It comes back better, comes back stronger. So this for me is amazing. Even when I had PTSD, my biggest concern was I had a eidetic memory before I had PTSD. That was always my concern. So for me, this brain fog thing and the annoyance we get with yourself, I've forgotten this. This is the good news. You're just in the chrysalis. That's why you're a mess. When you come out, not only are your wings going to be beautiful, you're going to be super smart, right? So that's something to remember. Aches and pains. All of a sudden, you have joint pains. Are your muscles sore? You've gone for a walk. You're sore for 3 days, right? And obviously, as your other symptoms get worse, as you gain more weight, as you're more stressed, your aches and pains will be more. So that's something that for me has been quite debilitating that I've had to manage, and exercise is important for that. Obviously, vaginal dryness, right? That's decreased estrogen levels. So that could be an issue. It also then increases risk for UTI. So often, if you've never had UTIs in your life and all of a sudden you're getting UTIs, that could be a sign of perimenopause, menopause. With that, decreased libido, memory, concentration issues, weight gain. We know sometimes if your estrogen is really out of balance, you can have breast tenderness, bone density loss for some women. And this, if we do another session around food and exercise,
Yes.
this is really important. Doing not excessive exercise, walking an hour a day. If you can do 2 30-minute sessions, even better for your metabolism. And then weight training 3 to 4 times a week. But you don't have to kill yourself. Start slowly, but do it. You have to maintain your muscles. Hair might thin or changing in textures, right? That's estrogen, testosterone fluctuations. And then anything urinary, more UTIs, more frequent urination, incontinence, right? Those are all things that come because your estrogen actually is decreasing. And I'm not a big fan of hormone replacement, whether it's bioidentical or not. The risk factors are exactly the same, actually. Even though if you were going to go HRT, I'd probably say go BHRT just because our body does recognize it, but the risk factors are actually the same. But if there was a hormone replacement therapy that I would recommend for women is if you're really battling with urinary tract, pelvic floor issues, to go to a woman's physio, but also to maybe consider vaginal estrogen, right? For me, that is one of the safer ones that you can actually consider to help with this.
Sure. Tertia, so much to look forward to.
You're in the chrysalis. Just remember, you're in the chrysalis. You're not the butterfly yet. Once you get to the others, I mean, just do yourself a favor. Go look at some menopausal women, right? That we don't notice them. Like, they take no crap in life. They are organized. So just know we just don't have them as role models because society hasn't brought them forward as role models. But they are more and more emerging. I'm menopausal. I'm in menopause, right?
Yeah.
Does it look that bad? I hope
No,
not.
absolutely. And as you say, if I look at grandmothers and they navigated it all without, like, I don't know, what we have got in terms of being able to reach those support. So just 2 final questions to end off here, Tertia. One is, how can we support? You've mentioned like ensuring our sleep. You've gone quite beautifully into some depth around food. Like, what are some of the other things, whatever it requires, navigating stress? What does that look like? What would you recommend, like, for women to be aware of? Oh, you've just mentioned exercise, and not that high intensity. Is there anything else?
By the way, just high intensity works if you do it for 15 minutes, no longer. If you do more than that, you're stressing your body out. So, but let's jump into it. So eat for your hormones, right? Nutrition. We discussed that a little bit. Movement daily, right? A walk, an hour a day, 2 to 3 minutes breaks. And if you get stuck, set your watch. Every hour you do 10 squats and 10 wall push-ups, right? Right? You can do that anywhere. You can go to toilets in the public mall and go do that if you have to, right? Even better, start doing it when people say, what are you doing? And tell the woman to do it with you, right? Even better. Okay. Sleep. Okay, we spoke about sleep. Sleep is the ultimate hormone regulator. Stress and nervous regulation, right? I've just started with this app called Neurotoned. It's kind of actually developed in South Africa. That really, I do it morning and night. It's 10-15 minutes, and it just calms down your nervous system, right? That's really important. mindset work around how you respond to stressful situations. I mean, that's a whole thing in its own, but that is
Yes.
something you need to look into. Identify your types of stress. You get physical stress, right? If you're going to over-exercise, that's physical stress. If you have relationship issues, loss, grief, issues at work, right? That's emotional stress. Environmental stress, toxins, pollutions, crappy products that we put on our skin. Dietary stress, low nutrients, right? If eating inflammatory foods, and then mental stress. So there's the 5 types of stress. So it's not just don't worry. Worry is not stress. Worry is an emotion.
Calm down.
So calm the hell down. It doesn't work, right? So yeah, introduce practices around this, right? That is
Yes.
right, and that will cover things like gut health and all those things as well. Don't buy into diet culture. Okay, we can do a whole podcast on diet culture. I mean, like, if I had to explain to you what you are seeing on things like TikTok and Instagram and how wrong it is about how your body actually works, especially in perimenopause and menopause, don't buy into that crap, please. Before you buy a program to go and lose 5 kilograms in 6 weeks, please just speak to me. Speak to me first.
Okay. So that's a good point. If people want to speak to you, how can they, what do you offer? Tell us how we can reach out if we would like support from Madam Tertia.
So on my website, and we can share the link, I've got most of my services. What I love to do is for you to book a free discovery call with me. First, we just have a chat and we see what's going on, and do you actually need anything else, or did you just maybe need somebody to talk to? Because sometimes that's all we need, right? So you book a discovery call with me, and then we see where you need to go, because I do lots of things, right? Yeah, whatever you need. So I would start there. Just book a discovery call, see how we go. But I am also going to be running a 13-month hormone health program. And I'm really battling with the name because hormone health, metabolic health, gut health, it does all of it. And it is catered for women in reproductive stages, perimenopausal stages. It's there for everybody. And why is it 13 months? Well, it's going to be 12 months. But to really get going, we need to support the body. So the first month we do a cleanse like you've never seen it before. You're not going to be drinking water and bone broths and juices. It's a full meal. You're going to eat food, right? I will never tell a woman not to have her 30 grams of protein. It's never going to come out of my mouth, right?
Okay.
So we start with that. And then every month we are going to tackle one of these aspects: nutrition, eating, sleeping, stress, thyroid, whatever, because it does take that long. And if we try and do this in 6 weeks or 12 weeks, I'm going to stress you out, and then all the work we're doing is for nothing. So that's why it's a 12-month program. So we can share some of that as well. That will be launching in March. So that's another way to obviously work with me. And what I love about that one is one of the things that helps us get through menopause is community. And so that's what we're going to do there. We're going to have all the content. We're going to have all the dietary stuff. We're going to have all that, but we're going to have community. You're going to be there with other women who are... There will be someone who's going to be experiencing something similar to you. You don't have to feel alone, right? That's important as well. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful, Tertia. That's fantastic. So can you just say it out loud in case people are audio listening? And we will put it in the notes underneath.
Yes.
But what is your website?
My website is www.PureRepubliq.com. That's the website. That's where all my corporate stuff is on. If you want to join our community on our network, that's PureRepubliq.co.za. But it's PureRepubliq with a Q at the end, right? Not a C.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah. That's fantastic. And what is the final message you want to leave with women navigating this stage of life? What is their final, summary?
Final thing is I want you to make a conscious decision to choose yourself, to say, I am worth the investment of time, energy, and resources. You have to be your own biggest advocate. You don't wait for permission from others. You don't wait for motivation to strike. You have to really step into this process of self-empowerment, because that is what evolution wants you to be. So you're fighting against thunder if you're resisting this, right? And so support your body with the right food, movements, and sleep. Learn to regulate, to respond to stress differently, to listen to your body's needs. Surround yourself with a community that supports you. We've lost that in our society as women, right? and choose you. Choose yourself at the deepest possible level. And remember that you're a butterfly.
That you've got wings, even if you can't see them.
You might
Tertia,
be in the muck, but they are coming, baby. They are coming.
Tertia, you've been a superstar. That's such a, I definitely feel like the hormones and all of that, I thought I knew a little bit, and now I feel I am aware of how much I don't know. And there's such a lovely invitation to go through it slowly and spend an entire month getting to know how some hormones function in your body and how you interact uniquely for each of us with those. So thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll be doing a follow-up with some more deep dive into movement or health or aspects that you clearly know so much about.
Awesome. Thank you, Candice. And I hope to see you all in the Hormone Health program. It'll be nice to actually meet everybody who's listening.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tertia.
Cheers.